I was working at the WESTROADS Mall in Omaha on December 5th, 2007. It was a Wednesday, right in the thick of the holiday shopping season. The mall was packed that afternoon. Families everywhere. Kids running around excited about Christmas coming up. Couples buying gifts. The usual chaos you'd expect 2.5 weeks before the holidays. I worked at a store on the second floor not too far from Von Maur. Von Maur was this upscale department store, the kind of place where everything smells like expensive perfume and the carpet is so plush you could sleep on it. My shift that day was supposed to end at 2 p.m. I remember looking at my watch and seeing it was about 1:42. I was counting down the minutes. Honestly, the mall had been insane all day, and I just wanted to go home, maybe grab some food, relax. But my manager asked if I could stay an extra 30 minutes to help with some shipment that just came in. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I agreed. That decision probably saved my life. Around 1:50, I was in the back stockroom organizing boxes when I heard it. At first, I thought maybe something heavy fell in the mall. It was this really loud bang that echoed through the walls. Then another one, and another. They were coming fast, one after another. And I remember my stomach just dropping because somewhere in my brain, I knew exactly what that sound was, even though I didn't want to believe it. I dropped the box I was holding and ran to the front of the store. Other employees were already there, looking out toward the mall corridor. People were running. I mean, full-on sprinting. Some of them screaming, parents grabbing their kids, shopping bags flying everywhere. A woman ran past our store, and she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. I asked her what was happening, but she just kept running. She didn't even look at me. That's when I heard more shots. They were clearer now, louder. They were coming from Von Maur. My coworker, Sarah, grabbed my arm and pulled me back into the store. She was shaking. We all were. Our manager ran to the front and pulled down the security gate halfway, then told everyone to get to the back. There were maybe 6 of us working that day, plus a handful of customers who'd been shopping when this started. We all huddled in the stockroom, and someone turned off the lights. It was dead silent in that room except for people crying and trying to call 911. The thing is, so many people were calling that the lines were jammed. I couldn't get through. I tried texting my mom, but my hands were shaking so bad I kept hitting the wrong keys. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I die, in a stockroom, surrounded by boxes of clearance merchandise. The weirdest thoughts go through your head when you think you might not make it out. We could still hear screaming from the mall. It wasn't constant, but every few seconds someone would let out this horrific scream, and it would echo through the whole building. I don't know how long we stayed in that stockroom. It felt like hours, but it was probably only about 20 minutes. Nobody said anything. We just sat there in the dark, listening, waiting. Eventually we started hearing police sirens, a lot of them. The sound got louder and louder until it was almost deafening. I heard helicopters too. Someone's phone got through to 911 finally, and they told us to stay put, stay quiet, and wait for police to come get us. They said the shooter might still be active. Those words, might still be active. I'll never forget how they made me feel. Like ice water got poured down my spine. We waited and waited. At some point I realized I couldn't hear any more gunshots. But I also couldn't hear the screaming anymore, and somehow that was worse. The silence was worse. It meant it was over. Whatever had happened was done. And now we had to find out how bad it was. A police officer finally came to our store maybe 40 minutes after the first shot. He had his gun drawn and he was sweeping the area, checking every corner. He told us we needed to evacuate immediately, but to stay close together and keep our hands visible. We filed out of the stockroom like zombies. I remember my legs felt like rubber. The mall looked like a war zone. Shopping bags and merchandise scattered everywhere. Someone's shoe in the middle of the walkway. A stroller knocked over on its side. But no people. Everyone was either evacuated or hiding, or worse. The officer led us toward the nearest exit and told us not to look toward Von Mauer. Of course I looked. I couldn't help it. There were more police at the entrance, and I could see the store was dark inside. That's all I saw before the officer told me again to keep moving. We got outside and the parking lot was completely surrounded. Police cars everywhere, ambulances, fire trucks, helicopters circling overhead. They separated us into groups and started taking statements. Everyone was crying or in shock or both. I called my mom, and the second I heard her voice, I just lost it. I couldn't even talk. I just cried into the phone until she understood I was okay. They wouldn't tell us anything at first. Not how many people, not what happened, nothing. We just had to wait. But bits and pieces started coming out from people who'd seen more than I had. Someone said the shooter was in Von Mauer. Someone else said he'd gone up to the third floor where the store's offices were. A woman said she'd seen him, said he was young, said he had a rifle. It took hours before they released an official statement. By then it was all over the news. 8 people dead, 4 more injured. The shooter, a 19-year-old kid named Robert Hawkins, had walked into Von Mauer carrying an AK-47 that he'd stolen from his stepfather's house. He'd taken the elevator up to the 3rd floor to the customer service area, and he'd just started shooting. Random people, employees, customers, people who were just there to shop for Christmas presents. He shot to them, and then he turned the gun on himself. 8 people, 8 lives ended because some kid decided he wanted to go out and take people with him. They released the names eventually. Jennifer Haida, she was 37. Maggie Webb, 24. Angie Schuster, 36. Janet Jorgensen, 66. Gary Scharf, 48. John McDonald, 65. Beverly Flynn, 47. Gary Joy, 56. I didn't know any of them personally, but I'd probably passed them in the mall before. Maybe stood behind them in line at the food court. Maybe held a door open for them. Normal people living normal lives until they weren't anymore. What messes me up the most is how close I was. If I hadn't stayed late, I would have been walking through that mall right around the time it happened. I might have gone into Von Mauer. I liked looking at their stuff even though I couldn't afford most of it. I could have been on that 3rd floor. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear those gunshots. I'd see people running. I'd be back in that stockroom in the dark, waiting to die. I quit my job at the mall a month later. I tried going back, but I couldn't do it. The second I walked through those doors, I'd start shaking. I couldn't breathe. It didn't matter that Von Mauer had reopened, that they'd cleaned everything and brought in grief counselors and held memorials. I couldn't separate the mall from what happened there. It's been years now and I still can't go to malls during the holiday season. The crowds, the noise, it all brings me right back to that day. My therapist says it's PTSD. Says it's normal for survivors to have triggers. But it doesn't feel normal. It feels like that day took something from me that I can't get back. I think about those 8 people a lot. About how they were just going about their day. Maybe they were stressed about money or what to cook for dinner or whether their kids were doing okay in school. Normal life stuff. They had no idea when they walked into that store that they'd never walk out. That their families would spend Christmas planning funerals instead of opening presents. Robert Hawkins left a note. In it, he said he was sorry, that he was a piece of shit, that he'd been depressed, and everyone would remember him now, and I hate that he was right. Everyone does remember him. His name is attached to those 8 victims forever. They don't get to be remembered for who they were, what they accomplished, how they loved their families. They're remembered as the people who died in the WESTROADS Mall shooting. That's what they've become in history. I still live in Omaha. I drive past that mall sometimes, and I can't help but look at it. It looks so normal, just another shopping center with big parking lots and bright signs. Nobody driving by would know what happened there unless they already knew. The building doesn't show scars, but a lot of us who were there that day still carry them. They say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's true. I think time just teaches you how to live with them, how to function even when part of you is still stuck in that stockroom in the dark, listening to gunshots and screaming, wondering if you're going to make it out alive. December 5th, 2007. That date is burned into my memory. A regular Wednesday afternoon that turned into one of the worst mass shootings in Nebraska history. 8 people who should still be here. Dozens more who survived but are forever changed. And me telling this story, still trying to make sense of something that will never make sense. If you ever worked retail during the holidays, you know how chaotic it is, how exhausting, how sometimes you just want the day to end so you can go home. But after that day, I never complained about a busy shift again, because I got to go home. 8 people didn't, and I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life. I was at the Tacoma Mall on November 20th, 2005. It was a Sunday right after lunch, and the place was packed like it always is on weekends. I'd gone with my girlfriend Rachel to do some early Christmas shopping. We weren't even supposed to be there that day. We'd planned to go hiking, but it was raining, that typical Washington November rain that just doesn't stop. So we figured, why not hit the mall instead? That decision almost got us killed. We got there around 1:30 in the afternoon. The parking lot was a nightmare. Cars everywhere. People circling for spots. We finally found one near the food court entrance and headed inside. The mall was warm and loud, filled with families and teenagers and the smell of pretzels and Chinese food mixing together. Rachel wanted to check out some stores on the second level, so we took the escalator up. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. We were in this clothing store. Rachel was looking at sweaters, and I was standing there, bored out of my mind, doing that thing where you pretend to be interested, but you're really just checking your phone. It was around 2:45, maybe 2:50. I remember because I just looked at the time thinking we'd been there over an hour and I was getting hungry. That's when I heard it. The first shot didn't really register. It sounded distant, muffled, like maybe something fell in another store. But then there was another one, and another. And people started screaming. Not just one person, but this wave of screaming that rolled through the mall like a tsunami. Rachel looked at me with these wide eyes, and she said, "What was that?" And I said, "I don't know, but we need to go right now." We ran toward the back of the store, but the employees were already there, pulling down this security gate that I didn't even know existed. One of them, this older woman with gray hair, she was shaking so bad she could barely get the lock to work. She kept saying, "Oh God, oh God, oh God," over and over. There were maybe 10 other customers trapped in there with us. A mom with 2 little kids, a teenage couple, a few other people I didn't really look at because I was too focused on the gunshots that kept getting louder. They weren't distant anymore. They were close. really close. We all moved to the very back of the store, past the stockroom, into this tiny employee break room that smelled like stale coffee and cigarette smoke. Someone turned off the lights, and we all just stood there in the dark, pressed against the walls, trying not to make a sound. I could hear everything outside. People running, more screaming, someone yelling call 911, and more shots. So many shots. Each one made me flinch. Rachel was holding my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers. But I didn't care. The mom with the kids was crying silently while she covered her children's ears. The little girl kept asking, "What's happening, Mommy?" in this tiny, scared voice. Her mom just held her tighter and said nothing. We stayed in that break room for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. My phone was buzzing like crazy. My mom calling my dad, people who'd seen the news. I wanted to answer, but I was too scared to make noise. Everyone's phones were going off and we just stared at them in the dark. Then we heard voices. Men's voices yelling commands. Someone said, "Please tell me that's the cops," and an employee whispered, "I think so." The security gate rattled and someone shouted, "Police. Anyone in there?" We all started yelling that we were here, we were okay. 2 officers came in with their guns drawn, scanning the store. They told us we needed to evacuate immediately, but stay low. They led us out into the mall corridor, and that's when I saw it. Blood on the floor. Not a little bit. It was smeared across the tile in long streaks, like someone had been dragged. There was a shoe lying there next to it. Just one shoe. A woman's shoe with the heel broken off. I'll never forget that shoe. The cops pushed us toward the exit, telling us to run. Or we ran past stores with their gates down, past overturned strollers and abandoned shopping bags, past the food court with half-eaten meals still on tables. It looked post-apocalyptic. We got outside, and the parking lot was chaos. Police cars everywhere, ambulances, people crying and hugging each other, news helicopters circling overhead. They were directing everyone to certain areas, taking statements, trying to figure out who was hurt and who was still inside. Rachel and I just stood there holding each other. We were both shaking. I felt like I might throw up. That's when I heard someone say, "He has hostages." I turned around and saw a cop talking into his radio. He was saying something about the food court, about the shooter, barricading himself inside Sam Goody, about people trapped in there with him. My stomach dropped. We'd been in the food court area less than an hour ago. We'd walked past Sam Goody. If we'd gone in there, if we'd decided to look at CDs instead of clothes, that could have been us. The next few hours were a blur. They wouldn't let anyone leave the parking lot. We sat in Rachel's car with the heater running and watched the news on her phone. That's how we found out what was happening. A 20-year-old named Dominic Maldonado had walked into the mall with a rifle and pistol. He'd started shooting near the food court. 7 people had been hit. And now he was inside Sam Goody, holding hostages at gunpoint. The news kept showing the same footage. People running, helping others who were injured. Paramedics loading people into ambulances. It was surreal watching it on a screen when I'd just been inside 20 minutes ago. Around 8 o'clock that night, they finally got him. He'd tried to take a final hostage, demanded police let him escape with her, but they'd shot him. Non-fatal shots. The hostages were released unharmed. 7 people had been shot, but miraculously none of them died. All 7 survived. We gave our statements to police around 9 p.m. The officer kept nodding like he'd heard the same story 50 times that day. There were hundreds of people in that mall, hundreds who went in to buy Christmas presents and ended up running for their lives. They let us leave around 10 o'clock. It had been over 7 hours. Rachel drove us back and neither of us said much. We'd been in a building with an active shooter and somehow made it out. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed everything, the sound of shots, the gray-haired employee shaking, the little girl asking what was happening, that shoe with the broken heel. All the tiny decisions that saved us. Dominic Maldonado was mentally ill. He talked about shooting up the mall before. His family tried to get him help but couldn't afford it. He'd planned it, picked the busiest time. 7 people still got shot. 7 people still carry those scars. Rachel and I broke up a few months later. Not directly because of the shooting, but it played a part. We couldn't go anywhere crowded without getting anxious. We'd both hear a loud noise and freeze. The relationship couldn't survive that shared trauma. It's been years and I still can't go to malls during busy times. I'll go early on weekdays when it's empty, but that's it. The second a place feels crowded, I panic. My therapist says that's normal, but it doesn't feel normal. It feels like I'm broken. I think about those 7 people who got shot sometimes. How they were just ordinary people doing ordinary things. And then suddenly they weren't. They were victims. They were statistics. They were part of another American mass shooting story that people heard about on the news and then forgot about a week later. But they didn't forget. Their families didn't forget. And neither did the hundreds of us who were there that day. Dominic Maldonado went to prison. He got 163 years for what he did. Every time I hear about another mall shooting, another public place attack, I think about him sitting in a cell. 7 people still got shot. Hundreds of people still got traumatized. I still can't walk into a crowded mall without my heart racing and my palms sweating. I still have nightmares sometimes. In them, I'm back in that break room in the dark, listening to gunshots, holding Rachel's hand. But in the nightmares, the police don't come. The shooting doesn't stop. The door opens and the shooter walks in, and I wake up right before he pulls the trigger. My therapist says eventually the nightmares will stop, but it's been years and they haven't stopped yet. The Tacoma Mall reopened less than 2 weeks later. They cleaned up the blood, fixed whatever got damaged, brought in extra security, and opened the doors like nothing happened. Life goes on, I guess. But I never went back. I drive past it sometimes, and I can see it from the highway, that big building with all the stores inside, and I just keep driving. I'll never set foot in that place again. 7 people shot, dozens held hostage, hundreds traumatized. That's what happened at the Tacoma Mall on November 20th, 2005. That's the day I learned that nowhere is really safe. That ordinary Sunday afternoons can turn into nightmares in seconds. That the sound of gunshots is something you never, ever forget. I wasn't there when it happened, but I worked at that Hollywood mall in Florida for 3 years before that day, and I was there in the weeks after. I saw the missing posters go up. I watched the police interviews. I heard the stories from the employees who were working that afternoon, and I've thought about it every single day since. What happened to Adam Walsh on July 27th, 1981 changed everything. Not just for his family, but for every parent in America. It was a Monday afternoon, summer in Florida, which meant it was hot and humid and everyone wanted to be inside where there was air conditioning. The mall was busy, but not packed. Reeve Walsh, Adam's mother, had brought her 6-year-old son with her to do some shopping at Sears. It was supposed to be a quick trip. She needed to look at lamps in the home furnishings department. Adam wanted to watch some older kids playing video games in the toy department. The Sears at Hollywood Mall had this area where they kept the Atari display models. Kids would crowd around them, taking turns playing, and it wasn't unusual for parents to let their children hang out there for a few minutes while they shopped nearby. It was the early 80s. Things were different then. You didn't think twice about letting your kid watch other kids play video games while you looked at lamps 2 departments over. Reeve told Adam he could stay and watch for a few minutes. She said she'd be right back. The lamp department was maybe 75 feet away. She could practically see him from where she was standing. She thought he'd be safe. Why wouldn't she? It was a department store in the middle of the day. She was gone less than 10 minutes, maybe 7, maybe 8. When she came back to get Adam, he wasn't there. The video game area was empty except for a couple of older boys still playing. She asked them where the little boy went. They said some lady made them all leave. Said they were being too loud or causing problems or something. The boys had gone outside, but they didn't know what happened to the younger kid who'd been watching them. Reeve felt that first spike of panic. You know the one. Every parent knows it. That moment when you can't see your child and your brain immediately goes to the worst place. She started calling Adam's name. Walking through the toy department, checking every aisle, looking behind displays. She went to customer service and had them page him over the intercom. Adam Walsh, please come to customer service. Your mother is looking for you. He didn't come. She searched the entire Sears store. Every department, every bathroom, every corner. She had employees helping her, other shoppers helping her. Nobody had seen a little boy by himself. Nobody had seen anything. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. That's when she called the police. I talked to one of the security guards who was working that day. His name was Marcus, and he quit about 6 months after. He told me he still has nightmares about it, about walking through that store, checking every spot, looking in places a 6-year-old couldn't even fit because you just don't know. He said the look on Reeve Walsh's face is something he'll never forget. The police arrived within minutes. They started searching. They questioned everyone in the store, everyone in the mall. They got descriptions of Adam. Blonde hair, missing his 2 front teeth, wearing a baseball cap and striped shirt. They put out alerts. They checked the parking lot surrounding area nearby stores. Hours passed, then a day, then 2 days. The story hit the news. Adam's picture was everywhere. His parents were on television begging for information, begging whoever took their son to bring him back. The entire country was watching. But here's what was happening behind the scenes. The police fumbled the investigation. They didn't take it seriously at first. They thought Adam probably just wandered off. They didn't secure the crime scene properly. By the time they realized this was a real abduction, crucial evidence was already lost. Marcus told me something that still makes me sick. They were so focused on searching the store that they didn't check the security footage from the parking lot until the next day. And by then, the tapes had already been recorded over. They had footage from the exact time Adam disappeared and they lost it. 2 weeks went by. Then on August 10th, 2 fishermen found something in a drainage canal about 120 miles north of the mall. It was Adam's severed head. just his head. The rest of his body was never found. I remember where I was when I heard the news. I was at home watching TV and it came across as a breaking news alert. I felt my stomach drop. We'd all been hoping, praying that Adam would be found alive. That maybe someone had taken him, but he was okay. He was being held somewhere and he'd come home. But that hope died the second that news broke. The medical examiner determined Adam had been deceased since shortly after his abduction, which meant while we were all searching, while his parents were on TV begging for his return, he was already gone. He'd been murdered probably within hours of being taken from that Sears store. The investigation into his murder went on for decades, literally decades. They had suspects, they had theories, but they couldn't prove anything. The case went cold. Adam's parents, John and Reeve Walsh, they never stopped fighting for answers. They never stopped pushing for justice for their son. John Walsh became a victims' rights advocate. He created America's Most Wanted, a TV show that helped catch hundreds of fugitives. The Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act was passed in 2006. Code Adam, the child safety program used in stores across America, was named after his son. All of this came from one father's refusal to let his son's death be meaningless. But they still didn't know who killed Adam. It wasn't until 2008, 27 years after the abduction, that police officially closed the case. They named Otis Toole as Adam's killer. Toole was a serial killer, who'd confessed to Adam's murder multiple times, then recanted, then confessed again. He died in prison in 1996. Police said they had evidence linking him to the crime, though many still question whether he was really the one. I think about Adam Walsh a lot. I think about how his mother left him for 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's all it took for her entire world to end. She said in interviews she'll never forgive herself. How do you live with that guilt even though it wasn't your fault? I think about those older boys playing video games, how they got kicked out by some woman, though nobody could ever figure out who she was or why she made them leave. Some people think she was involved somehow. We'll probably never know. I think about the security footage that got erased, the evidence lost because police didn't take it seriously enough in those first crucial hours. How different would this have ended if they'd preserved those tapes? Mostly, though, I think about Adam, a 6-year-old kid who just wanted to watch other kids play video games for a few minutes, who trusted that his mom would come back for him, who had no idea that those would be the last normal moments of his life. I still work in retail, different store, different state. And I see kids in stores all the time, kids waiting while their parents shop, kids doing exactly what Adam was doing that day. And every single time I get this tightness in my chest because I know what can happen in 7 minutes. Parents are different now. They don't let their kids out of their sight like they used to. They hold their hands in parking lots. And it's because of cases like Adam's. We learned. But we learned by losing children first. The Hollywood Mall is still there. The Sears closed years ago, but the building is still standing. I drove past it once, and I couldn't bring myself to go inside. I just sat in the parking lot looking at it, thinking about that day in 1981. A mother shopping for lamps. A little boy watching video games. 7 minutes that changed everything. There's a memorial for Adam at the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C. His parents have said they hope his story prevents other children from suffering the same fate. And maybe it has. Maybe the code Adam alerts and the Amber alerts and all the safety protocols we have now have saved lives. Maybe Adam's death wasn't completely meaningless, but it shouldn't have happened at all. A 6-year-old boy should have grown up, should have gone to school and made friends and learned to drive and fallen in love and had his own kids someday. Instead, his life ended in unimaginable horror because someone evil saw an opportunity and took it. I wasn't there when it happened, but I carry it with me anyway. Every person who worked at that mall carries it. Every parent who heard the story carries it. We all think about our own 7 minutes. The times we turned our backs, the times we let our guard down, the times we got lucky and nothing happened. July 27th, 1981. A Monday afternoon at the Hollywood Mall. A mother shopping for lamps. A little boy who just wanted to watch video games. 7 minutes that destroyed a family and changed America forever. That's the story of Adam Walsh, and I'll never forget it.